Wait, before you book your next salon appointment, I need you to stop for just one moment and look at something with me. If you have been sitting in that salon chair year after year, walking out with the same cut, telling yourself it looks fine, telling yourself it is low maintenance, telling yourself it is just hair, I need you to hear something that your stylist has probably never said out loud. There are 4 haircuts that are quietly, systematically adding years to your face. Not gray roots, not wrinkles, not the wrong lipstick, the haircut itself. And the most dangerous part is that most women who are wearing one of these 4 cuts have no idea it is happening. It crept in slowly, one appointment at a time, until one day you looked in the mirror and the woman looking back felt older than you actually are inside. In the next 18 minutes, I am going to show you exactly which 4 cuts they are, why each one ages the face in a completely different way, and what to ask for instead, so that your very next appointment becomes the one that changes everything. And stay with me until the very end, because after the 4 cuts, I am going to give you the one question, just one, that you can ask any stylist before they pick up the scissors. The answer to that single question will tell you immediately whether the person holding the shears actually understands how hair and faces change after 60. If they hesitate, if they give you a vague answer, if they look confused, you will know, and you will be able to walk out of that salon before they touch a single strand. Now, before we get into the countdown, I want to say something to you directly. I know what it is like to feel like your reflection stopped matching who you are. I know what it is like to lose the person you built your life with and then stand in front of a mirror and not even know where to begin putting yourself back together. Hair feels like a small thing when the world has just tilted on its axis. But I have learned, in 30 years of doing this work, that hair is never really just hair. It is the first thing you see every morning. It is the thing that either confirms or contradicts the story you are trying to tell the world about who you are right now. And right now you deserve a story that is honest, current, and beautiful. So let us start. The number 1 most life-changing cut on this entire list, the one that takes the most years off the most faces, is the last one I'm going to cover. Do not skip ahead. The reason I'm saving it for last is that the other 3 are the setup. Understanding what goes wrong with those 3 is the exact reason you will immediately recognize why the final one works so powerfully. Trust me and stay. Let us count down. Cut number 4 on our list of haircuts that age women over 60 is one of the most common cuts in every salon in the country. You have seen it. You may be wearing it right now. It is the one that gets requested more than almost any other style in this age group. And that is exactly the problem. Cut number 4 is the all one length blunt cut at shoulder length or below. Now, before you close this video, hear me out, because this is not about length. This is not about whether long hair is appropriate after 60, and it absolutely is on the right woman with the right structure. This is about what happens when long, all one length hair with no layers and no internal movement is placed against a mature face. And what happens is this. As we age, the face naturally loses some of its structural definition. The jawline softens slightly. The area between the cheekbone and the jaw begins to feel less sharp. The temples can lose a little volume. These are not flaws. They are simply what happens when the collagen and fat distribution in the face shift over decades. It is biology, it is normal, and it is completely workable, if your haircut is doing its part. The problem with an all one length cut at shoulder length or below is that the weight of the hair lands exactly at the jaw and chin. That weight pulls the hair straight down. Straight down means no movement, no lift, no diagonal line for the eye to follow. And when the hair hangs in a straight, heavy curtain along the sides of the face, it actually draws the eye downward and outward, emphasizing exactly the area of the face that has softened, rather than drawing attention upward toward the eyes and cheekbones where you want it. Here's a way to picture it. Think of a frame painting. If the frame is heavy at the bottom and empty at the top, the eye reads the whole composition as bottom heavy and weighted. But if the frame has visual interest at the top and sides, the eye moves upward and the whole piece feels lifted and dynamic. Your hair is the frame. Your face is the painting. A heavy, straight curtain of all one-length hair is a bottom-heavy frame. And no matter how beautiful the painting is, that frame will always make it feel heavier than it actually is. The fix is not to cut it short. The fix is to add what stylists call movement and graduation, a soft layer through the mid-lengths and around the face that allows the hair to swing, to catch the light differently at different angles, and to create that diagonal line that lifts the eye instead of dragging it down. You keep the length if you love the length. You simply stop treating the hair like a single flat sheet and start treating it like a living, moving frame that works in your favor. When you go to your stylist, ask for face framing layers starting at the cheekbone with a soft graduation from the mid-length down to the ends. No chunky layers, no dramatic internal staircase, just enough internal movement to let the hair live and breathe rather than hang and drag. But number 4 is actually the gentlest of the 4 on this list, because number 3 has a characteristic that almost no one talks about, and once you hear it, you will never look at this cut the same way again. Cut number 3 is the rounded bowl cut, or what most people simply call the granny cut. And I am going to ask you something before I describe it, because I want you to really sit with the answer. When you think of the word matronly, when you picture a woman who has, in the words of the culture around us, let herself go, what haircut is she wearing in that mental image? It is this one, every time. The rounded bowl cut is typically short to medium in length. It sits around the ear or just below. It is cut in a perfectly even, rounded shape all the way around the head. The perimeter at the bottom is curved. The sides are curved. The crown is curved. Everything is a soft, unbroken arc, and it does not move. It does not swing. It sits on the head like something that was placed there and has not shifted since. And here is the specific reason this cut adds so many years to the face, a reason that goes far deeper than it simply being unfashionable. Your face, as I mentioned earlier, naturally softens and rounds with age, not dramatically, not unbecomingly, just slightly, gradually, in the way that all human faces do over decades of life. Now here's the critical point. When the haircut surrounding that face is also rounded, also soft and curved in every direction, the face and the cut merge into one continuous rounded shape. There is no contrast. There is no line. There is nothing for the eye to stop on, nothing that creates the visual impression of structure or lift. Light and shadow are what create the appearance of definition in a face. Sharp lines catch light differently than curved ones. When you have a haircut with at least one clean, intentional line, a blunt edge at the jaw, a diagonal sweep across the forehead, a distinct point at the nape, that line acts as a visual anchor. The eye finds it, registers structure, and the whole face reads as more defined and more alert. A rounded bowl cut has none of those lines. It is all curve, all softness, all merge, and the face disappears into it rather than being lifted by it. The deeply frustrating thing about this is that the women I see wearing this cut are almost never women who set out to look tired or matronal. They are women who walked into a salon and said something like, "Just clean it up," or "Give me something easy to manage," and a stylist, a well-meaning but uninformed stylist, gave them the path of least resistance. A round, safe, maintenance-free shape that requires no real understanding of how the face actually works. Easy is not the same as right, and this cut is the most common example of that truth I have ever seen in 3 decades of this work. What to ask for instead depends entirely on your face shape and your texture, but the guiding principle is the same regardless. You want at least one deliberate straight or diagonal line in the cut. If you want to stay short, ask for a pixie with a soft sweeping fringe rather than a blunt rounded perimeter. If you want a little more length, ask for a textured crop or a bixie, a hybrid between a bob and a pixie, where the nape is clean and tapered, but the top has enough length to create a soft, intentional movement rather than a static, rounded dome. The goal is contrast. You want the cut to have a shape that pushes back gently against the softness of the face rather than reflecting it. That contrast is what creates the impression of lift, freshness, and structure, and it changes everything. Now, number 2 on this list is the one that surprised my clients the most over the years because it sounds like it should be aging friendly. It sounds like the modern smart choice. And in some versions, in some hands, it absolutely is. But the version most women over 60 are actually getting is doing something to their face that they have never been told about. Cut number 2 is the layered shag, specifically the version that has been done wrong. The soft shag is genuinely one of the best cuts available for women over 60 when it is executed correctly. The movement, the diagonal lines, the broken up perimeter, all of those elements do exactly what we want a haircut to do for a mature face. And when a talented stylist builds a shag with the right internal structure, it is genuinely transformative. But here is what almost always goes wrong when this cut is done by someone who does not fully understand it. A shag requires very specific layering technique. The shorter layers must be concentrated at the crown to create real lift. The longer layers at the perimeter must have weight and shape to give the overall silhouette a purposeful outline. And the transition between the two, from the shorter interior layers to the longer exterior ones, must be smooth and graduated, not abrupt. When a stylist cuts a shag without understanding this architecture, and many do because the shag looks deceptively casual and easy on a reference photo, what you end up with is a cut that has chaos instead of movement, random layers at random lengths that do not work together toward any coherent shape. The hair sticks out in some places, lies flat in others, has no lift at the crown because the layers were not placed correctly, and has no weight at the perimeter because the stylist confused thin with light. The result looks like someone started to cut a shag and then changed their mind partway through. It looks unfinished. And unfinished on hair reads exactly the same as untended, which reads as older. The other mistake that commonly happens with the shag on women over 60 specifically is that the stylist adds too much texture too close to the face using thinning shears. Thinning shears, and I want you to memorize this, are not your friend on aging hair. Aging hair is typically more porous, more fragile, and more prone to frizzing than younger hair. When you take thinning shears to it, especially around the face, you create wispy, weak-looking ends that have no weight and no shape. They float and frizz rather than falling cleanly, and floating, frizzed ends around a mature face look disheveled, not casual. There is a difference between effortlessly undone and simply undone. Thinning shears, used aggressively on aging hair, produce the latter. What to ask for instead? If you want the shag, ask for a razor-cut shag or a point-cut shag only. Tell your stylist specifically that you do not want thinning shears used anywhere on the cut. Ask them to concentrate the shorter layers at the very top of the crown specifically for lift and to preserve weight at the perimeter so the overall shape has an intentional outline rather than just dissolving into air at the ends. A well-built shag is one of the most beautiful cuts a woman over 60 can wear. An improperly built shag can quietly undo everything. Which brings us to number 1 on this list. The cut I promised you at the very beginning. The one that is not just the most common aging mistake, it is the most invisible one, because the women wearing it are often the hardest to convince that anything is wrong. And the reason for that is simple. This cut looks fine. It does not look bad. It does not look obviously wrong. It does not trigger the immediate reaction that the granny cut does, or the heavy all-one-length curtain does. It looks acceptable. It looks appropriate. It looks like exactly what it is, a reasonable, inoffensive, perfectly adequate haircut. And adequate, after 60, is the most aging word in the English language. Cut number 1 is the feathered mid-length cut with visible unblended layers. You know this cut. It was the cut of the 70s and 80s. It was on every magazine cover for 2 decades. It suited the faces and the fashion of that era beautifully. Soft feathering, wings at the side, visible layers that caught the light and bounced with every step. Here is what has happened since then. Your face has changed. Not in a bad way, just in the way that all faces do over decades. The distribution of volume in the face shifts. The areas that used to be naturally full are slightly less so. The areas where shadows naturally fall have changed position slightly. And the feathered, visibly layered cut that worked perfectly against the face you had at 35 is now doing something very different against the face you have now. Specifically, the visible layers, the ones you can actually see stepping down through the hair length, create horizontal lines across the face. Horizontal lines, as any visual artist will tell you, read as width rather than height. They spread the eye outward rather than lifting it upward. And when those horizontal layer lines appear at the sides of the face, in the area between the cheekbone and the jaw, they emphasize exactly the zone where most women over 60 have the most concerns. The feathering around the face, the soft, wispy, fanned-out pieces that were the signature of this cut in its heyday, also works differently on older hair and older skin than it did at 30. Then those wispy pieces framed a face that had abundant natural volume and definition. They were like a soft accent around a naturally structured canvas. Now those same wispy pieces float around a face that is doing its best to hold its definition, and instead of adding softness, they add blur. There is a critical difference between soft and blurry. Soft is intentional and beautiful. Blurry is uncertain and unfocused on a face and a haircut reads as, you know the word by now, older. Here is what is remarkable, though. The fix for this cut requires less change than almost anything else on this list. You do not need to cut off the length. You do not need to change the overall shape dramatically. You simply need to update the technique. The modern version of this mid-length cut, the one that does everything the original intended to do, but without any of the aging effects, is the blunt perimeter lob with internal weight removal. It keeps the length, it keeps the softness. But instead of visible stepping layers that create horizontal lines, you have a clean, blunt bottom edge that acts as that visual anchor we talked about. The line that the eye finds, registers as structure, and uses as a starting point to travel upward. The internal weight removal, done underneath and invisible from the outside, gives the hair the movement and lightness that the feathered layers were trying to create, but without any of the horizontal lines. The hair moves. It just does not advertise every single layer while it is moving. Now, I promised you the one question, the single thing you can ask any stylist before they pick up the scissors that will tell you immediately whether they understand what they are doing. Here it is. Ask them this. Based on my face shape and where I am in life, what specific element of this cut will create lift and structure around my jawline? Not what style are you going to do, not how long should it be. Specifically, what element creates lift and structure at the jaw? A stylist who truly understands mature hair and mature faces will answer this immediately and specifically. They will tell you about a specific line, a specific layer placement, a specific technique. They will use words like perimeter, internal weight, point cutting, graduation. They will have a plan. They will have a reason for every decision they are about to make. A stylist who does not understand it, and there are many, and they are not bad people, they are simply undertrained in this specific area, will give you a vague answer. They will say something like, "We will just clean it up and see how it looks." They will change the subject to the color. They will ask what you want instead of telling you what you need. If you hear vagueness, leave. I mean that sincerely and without any drama. You have sat in enough chairs, getting enough cuts that have quietly worked against you. You now know enough to recognize the difference between a stylist who has a plan and one who does not. You owe it to yourself to use that knowledge. Before I let you go, there is one more thing I want to say, and it has nothing to do with haircuts specifically. There is a particular version of settling that can happen after significant loss. It is quiet, it is gradual, and it looks from the outside like practicality or low maintenance or simply not caring about appearances anymore. But it is something else. It is the slow withdrawal of investment in yourself. One give me the usual appointment at a time, until one day you realize that the person in the mirror has stopped being a priority. I see it. I recognize it. And I want to gently, firmly push back against it. You are not at a stage of life where you have earned the right to disappear. You are at a stage of life where you have earned the right to be exactly and fully yourself. Whatever that looks like, whatever that costs in terms of time and intention, and a slightly more honest conversation with your stylist. A great haircut is not vanity. It is not frivolous. It is a decision to show up for yourself in a way that says, I am still here, I still matter, and I am not done. Which of these 4 cuts have you been wearing? Which one do you now see differently than you did 18 minutes ago? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and I mean that. I read them, I think about them, and they shape the videos I make next. If this changed something for you today, even just the way you will walk into your next salon appointment, then this video did exactly what it was meant to do. You deserve to look in the mirror and feel genuinely, warmly like yourself. Not a version of yourself that stopped updating 10 years ago. Yourself right now in this chapter. And it can start with one conversation, one question, one honest stylist who finally gives your face the cut it has been waiting for. And one last thing before you go. If this is the first video you have found on this channel, I want you to know what we do here. This channel exists for women over 60 who are done settling, done accepting the usual, done walking out of appointments that did not serve them and telling themselves it is fine. It is not fine. You are not a woman who does fine. You are a woman who does intentional, considered, and honestly quite magnificent, and your hair should say exactly that. Subscribe if you want to be here every week for that conversation. Leave a comment telling me which of these 4 cuts you recognize most from your own salon history. And share this with a woman in your life who needs to hear that her reflection can look exactly like who she actually is. Next week, we are going into the specific questions to ask about color. The ones that will tell you whether your current shade is lifting your face or flattening it. You will not want to miss it. I will see you then. And in the meantime, make the appointment, ask the question, and do not accept vague. You deserve that. Every single time. Use it. And know that the woman who walks out of that next appointment feeling genuinely, warmly like herself, that is who you have always been. She just needed the right frame. I will see you next week. And in the meantime, make the appointment, ask the question, and do not accept vague. You deserve that. Every